And on today's show, we have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, John Diaz, who's here with us today. He is here to talk to us about his theater experiences, as well as, he does a whole lot of things with community theater. And again, he's been a longtime friend of mine, and I'm really excited to have him here with us today. Thank you for being with us, John. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, Javier and Annalie. So a little bit about myself. So Javi and I, I moved to Marin in 7th grade, and we kind of met just, playing video games. We were having the same interests. And then high school comes around, and that's when we went to San Rafael High, and I started off in their drama program. I actually started off as a stage crew person.
Right.
I was like, oh, I don't know about performing. I'll just do stage crew. Mm-hmm. And the next show, I come in to grab a crew application, and one of my friends, shout out Berna, tears my crew application sheet in half, hands me an actor application. I stay there for the auditions. I get one of the lead roles, and that's how I kind of caught the theater bug. And then just from there, I started networking out to other theaters around Marin, and then that just started this networking.
It sparked that
Yes.
interest, and now it's something that literally you have been following ever since. So.
I've literally made a career out of it, which is insane.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, I don't know, how did you, you just let it out, when you did your audition, when you were acting?
Yeah, I would say, at the time when I did that first audition my sophomore year of high school, it was just kind of the way the audition was, it was oh, you're going to, walk to the center of the stage. They would give you a prompt oh, you just won the lottery. And then you would do how you would react to that prompt. And then once you have that emotion, exit off the stage. So it was very low intense. It didn't feel very nerve-wracking to me to be able to create during that audition. And then it was just being in new environments, meeting new people that and just being kind to people that just, I guess, kept the ball rolling. Because if you're a swell person to work with, then everyone's oh my god, I'm working on this project, or we're doing this next season. Come on, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I feel some people who want to be actors, they kind of get nervous when it's time to act, and I feel that kind of limits them to let it out or express the emotion of being an actor. So it's really cool that you just on the first audition you got the lead role.
Yeah, and it's definitely easier said than done. And it's actually funny because I don't know if I told you this, I'm choreographing at our old high school right now. And the kids are amazing, but there definitely is this I mean I feel it too, especially coming out of the pandemic, that social anxiety of being you're around your peers, and it's really hard to let go and really dive into the acting or the playing pretend, right? Because that's right. Really what acting is. It's
Yeah, and like I said, some of you might not know this either, but I also had some experience with theater through our high school. So we both, John and I both graduated from the same class of San Rafael High School, so class of 2017. So shout out to all the class of 2017ers out there. But yeah, so me and him, we were both in the theater program there at SR, and I helped out with the sound, actually. And running the soundboard there is what helped ignite my interest in what we're doing here today and building this studio and getting into audio. So it's really interesting that both of us kind of caught our careers out of this one theater program, you know what I mean, at our high school. So yeah, to me, it's just amazing seeing how far both of us have come. I mean, it's been 5 years since we graduated high school. It doesn't feel that long, I know, but to me, having just being able to catch up with my old high school friends and seeing that you're doing good, and we have our own friend group that we always catch up with. it's awesome. And again, I'm really excited to get more into your acting career, as well as your directing career, because I know that was, I mean, from what I remember was you were going to direct Annie, right?
Yeah, so before the pandemic, I was directing Annie. And if you're not familiar with Annie, if you know It's a Hard Knock Life for Us,
Yeah.
it's from that.
I think they came out with a Netflix movie recently, no?
I'm not
Or Matilda. I'm thinking about Matilda. They came
Yeah,
out with a
yeah,
Matilda.
yeah,
That's what I was
yeah.
thinking of. Yeah.
So I was supposed to be directing it with a theater company based out of San Anselmo called 23 Elephants Theater Company. And also shout out to them because they're essentially like been my theater mentors, my theater parents. Great people. But I was supposed to be directing that for them. I had two casts. So I had two Annies, like, you know.
Yeah.
whole shebang.
From what I remember is that he was already like, he had the cast. You guys have even started rehearsals.
Yeah, we did auditions. I think we were rehearsing for 3 weeks. And then the shelter in place order happened. And we were like, okay, like we can't be rehearsing anymore. Let's do it over Zoom. And then at that time, too, especially in the theater community, because, you know, shows across the world were like, okay, we have to do everything over Zoom. Some people were like, okay, we'll try to make it work over Zoom. We were one of the shows where we were like, we don't have like, you know, the facilities. We don't have what it takes to really make this entertaining.
Right.
And then we were like, oh, it'll just be 2 weeks. We'll
Yeah,
be
we all thought
back.
COVID
And
was
then
only going to last 2 weeks.
we
right?
all
Yeah.
know. And then we all know how that turned out. And then we were like, yeah, this production just is not going to see the light of day, unfortunately.
So that turned into lost media.
And what were you planning with Zoom? Just like Zoom to rehearse the script or to like some way like record?
Yeah, it started to delve out into like, we're all just going to meet and then I'm going to give out my blocking and where I want people to go on the stage. And like all of the kids would just like set up their camera and they would pretend, you know. And then slowly as things, you know, with the world started evolving, we started to figure out, okay, like we're probably not going to be able
do
to
that.
Yeah. So then at that point, then the theater company was just like, yeah, we're just going to not do the production and just cancel it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, man, because I remember John was like hyping that up. I remember I was thinking about like helping you out with potentially filming it as like a documentary thing where we get to like to film you as your first directing role. I don't know. I remember I was talking to you about that a while ago, but hey, is there any other directing gigs coming up soon or
that
anything
you can spoil.
that you can spoil to us?
Yeah, and actually, it's not going to be more of a theater directing gig, but actually, so it's going to be a film directing type thing where, so 23 Elephants Theater Company, they're run by a married couple. Their names are Stephen and B. So Stephen and I, we, over the, like, once things started opening up again, because I was working on some other short films, and Stephen's like, hey, I would love to do short films. So he and I started talking about trying to write and create our own film works.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm kind of working on right now is, and this name is subject to change. Right now I'm calling it the COVID Chronicles, where it's just going to be an anthology of a bunch of short films of people's own personal experiences that they've experienced over the pandemic.
Oh.
So it's like, you know, something like unique that happened to you and it wouldn't have happened
If it weren't for the pandemic.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly. And then
Interesting.
yeah, because, and it all started with the idea of, you know, we can't really process the things that have happened to us during the pandemic because like we're still kind of in it.
Right.
Like, you know, some time has to pass where you can look back and be like, oh my God, that was traumatizing. Like, so then that directing endeavor is hopefully trying to convey that. Because I feel like it would also be a really cool like timestamp or time capsule to like look back on it. Because, you know, something like that's never going to happen again. So then like we can look back on it and like hopefully the film can convey the same emotions that we were experiencing like, you know, 2 years ago.
Right.
And how long have you been like doing this project of being a director?
First, I would say definitely started off directing in theater. And I would say when we graduated from 2017, I was getting these assistant director positions. And because the theater company that I would work for, they would have multiple tiers of productions from really 4 to 8-year-old productions, 9 to 13-year-old productions, and then 14 to 18. So I was kind of working up the ladder, assistant directing across all tiers. And then once they were like, okay, we think you can start directing shows, I would start at the bottom with the little ones, and then start directing and working my way up. And then Annie was supposed to be my working up, I'm at this tier now. And then
And then just to go back to your acting career, I know that you said in the beginning, your first audition, you did so well, but have you done any warm-ups before, going onto the stage or, going?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and especially for any actors, definitely a physical and vocal warm-up. Vocal if you're doing musical theater. I, for the majority of my career, have done musical theater. Warm-ups for those are so important, especially for the voice.
Absolutely.
Even if you are going in for a straight play, it's because your voice is your instrument, right? And then if you're going to go into an audition and you want 100%, you're asking for 100%, you got to warm up the engine a little bit, do sirens, warming up your face, and then,
Yeah, making lots of funny faces. So I remember during In the Heights, when we were in the Heights, that was the last show I ever did. I remember a lot of us would drink tea before we would do something because it warms up your vocal cords, and then also before we would be on stage, they'd always do little piano scales, and we'd all go do. But there's different ways of saying it. You'd be na 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 na, or zzz, or you would activate all sorts of different noises with your mouth, because it would help. Obviously, with just projecting your voice, the vocals, right? Your range, it helps with your range. And
yes, yeah.
And sorry, have you ever had your voice crack when you're acting or
that
singing?
happens.
Oh,
that happened to me.
100%. Yeah, especially in high school.
Oh yeah, bro.
Or
And you just rolled with it, or
you have to. You have to. And I will say too, another acting pro tip is whenever you make a mistake, you've been rehearsing the show for 3 months, but your audience is just seeing that for the first time. So they're okay, if your voice cracks, if you're, oh my goodness, I make a mistake, but you don't show it, the audience is just going to roll with it. And they're not even going to notice that you made any mistakes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why improvisation is so important in theater too. It's a really good skill to have, because at any moment something can go wrong, but you have to stay in character the whole time because you want to make the audience believe that, hey, okay, this is just, they didn't even know that it was a improv thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely.
I feel like if you master that, you're already a good actor in that case.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But another question that I wanted to ask was how do you get into the mode of your character? Do you go, I know some certain actors, they go to certain places and visualize or put themselves in those shoes, how their character would react to certain things. So I'm wondering if you do that too.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the most fun things about being an actor or performer is because there's such a wide variety of roles. And some of them give you a really in-depth backstory. Some of them it's just oh yeah, you're just some guy in high school. There you go. And for me, the first thing that I try to think about, because obviously I'm using my body on the stage, first I start to try and think about the characterizations. Because obviously right now I'm John, sitting in the studio, right? But then if I'm a successful businessman, I'm probably going to like up my posture. My chin's probably going to be up. I might have this thing where like, for me personally, because I have so much like power, or I think I'm so cool, I'm probably not going to be turning my head a lot, right? So then it's like, depending on the character, I definitely think about the physicalizations. And then also with the voice as well, like, this is how I talk. This may not be how, like, how would this character talk as well? Yeah. And then definitely also facial reactions, thinking about diving into the psychological mind of the character. Like, okay, like how would they react? You know, if someone spilled something in front of them, if they got food spilled on them, like, you know, all of these different scenarios, you just go through all of those in your head. And studying the material and like the show itself and like, you know, figuring out the arc of your character as well can really help inform you about what scenarios you can run through in your head.
And have you rejected any character that you just did not want to act?
Reject in the way of like, oh, I don't want to play this character, or like, oh, this choice that this character makes, like, I'm not with it. Like, let's make.
No, like the character itself. The first option that you said.
Oh, I would say usually no, because I like one of the things in improv. Rule number one is of improv: you always say yes. So it's, and that I feel like as well, that having roles where I feel uncomfortable, or roles that I feel uncomfortable in, to me are open opportunities for growth. Because it's like, let's say, oh, I don't like, this isn't making sense to me, then I'm going to go home and I'm going to try and make it make sense.
Right.
Right. And then like, it's one of those things where once I do make that connection, then, you know, that's where the growth happens.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think it's also good to just have a variety of roles to play, right? Because that diversifies like your acting power, like the way you can just act like anything. Really, that's why some of the best actors in the world, right, it can literally act like anything, right? And also, thank you for going into like depth about how you get into character, because I know a lot of actors, like for example, Joaquin Phoenix for the Joker movie, right? He lost like a ton of weight, and he studied like the psychology, like how people that were going through like in like asylums, like in actual asylums, he would study how those people would act, and to really get into that role of the Joker. And I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, like he does a damn good job. So it's, for me, like it's always just awesome seeing how much passion and dedication people, like actors, especially in theater and movies, put into their roles. You know what I mean? Because that really is what makes them memorable at the end of the day.
Who was the actor that you said?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was asking you this question because I was thinking of Heath Andrew Ledger. I'm not sure.
Oh, Heath Ledger?
Yes, the one.
Heath Ledger, who
the Joker
played
for the
Joker
Dark
for
Knight.
Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a legend. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently I heard when Heath Ledger was dropping into the character for the Joker, and this is, I believe, this is what they call method acting.
That's what it is, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like you yourself. Like, I know you mentioned like, oh, like going to a place, like for example, like if, or for Heath Ledger, he was like, okay, if I'm gonna play like this insane person, I believe he like locked himself away for like a month.
Oh, wow.
I think that also could just
I
be,
think
like,
I've heard that too.
yeah, yeah, but it'll be like certain things where like, oh, okay, like if I'm playing a butcher and I don't know, like I've never seen anyone, you know, then I
Yeah.
Or
myself,
different type of knives.
yes, exactly. Where okay, I would learn all of the things that a butcher would, where I
Right.
would learn how the job is, you know.
How that goes, yeah.
That's
and
cool.
yeah, no, that is cool.
You learn a lot of like new stuff and skills as an actor. So
Right. And I wanted to ask you, John, what is one of your favorite memories in theater? Because I know you have a lot, but like, is there one that sticks out to you that
Oh,
you think?
100%.
Yeah,
And it's with you.
it's with me.
It's with you and In the Heights.
Oh, okay.
So if you're not familiar with In the Heights, there's the movie on HBO Max. You should go see it. But there, spoiler alert too for In the Heights. So what isn't in the movie is, so Javier played Kevin Rosario, who was, you know, the taxi owner.
Who was Nina Rosario's dad?
Yes. And then in the musical, Kevin, aka played by Javier during our production, had this song called Atención, where he announces that Abuela Claudia passed away, who was like my primary guardian growing up. I was playing Usnavi. And it was opening night. And I don't know if you remember this, but we just like go through the show, and Abuela Claudia's passing is just so abrupt. Like, it's this song happens, and your last lines were, Abuela Claudia passed away at noon today.
I don't even remember that. But yeah.
And the whole entire audience just had this collective, aww. Like
people felt it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like for me as a performer, like knowing that you can have a packed house and you can really like
move
them that way. Like I've never felt the amount of like the wave of emotions that like flooded through my body, because as soon as that song finishes, there's this guitar underscoring that happens. And then I start this song called Alabanza, and it starts with this rap that's more like a spoken eulogy. And ever since that moment, every single time that I would perform that, I would cry. And that night, the first night where there was like the aw, that wave of emotion, like I just blanked out. But all I knew that I was just ugly crying.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm on this like balcony and I'm just like ugly crying. And the whole entire cast, like I have to go, they move me down onto the stage and we all have this like big group hug in blue light. And as soon as we exited off stage, the whole entire cast was checking up on me and we're like, John, are you okay? Like, why are you crying? And I'm like, I don't know. It was just so good. Like, yeah.
Dang, that is a great memory, because honestly, that, as you were saying, and I was like, okay, now I'm remembering this, because like I said, like I haven't thought of that show in a really long time now, because we did it, 2018? Yeah, 2018. So it was about 4 years ago now. So
yeah,
you know, for me that was the last show I ever did, and it was a really great show overall. Like I had a lot of fun, especially with you, you know, and just meeting some of the great cast members. And I see that a lot of the people that were in that show, the thing that was interesting about that show in the Heights was that it was a wide age range, like a very wide age range for that show. Like there were some kids there that was like, how there wasn't like a 6-year-old kid or a 7-year-old kid
in
in
like
there?
fifth, no, 10. Like I think
10? Okay.
10 or 9.
Wait, so this wasn't from high school?
No, this is separate. So this was at the
This was a
Throckmorton.
year, yeah.
Yeah, this is at the Throckmorton Theater up there in Mill Valley. That John actually has a lot of experience there, and I went and auditioned for it too, because our friend, actually another friend of ours, Kevin Allen, he was actually directing. That was his first big directing gig, so we were there to support, and we're like, yeah, we'll audition and we'll of course get into it, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that we knew that was in that show and we wanted to support, and we really gave it our all. We really did. We really gave it our all in that show, and that's just that is a great memory. And thank you for, because I remember I definitely bawled out during one of my songs too, because I think it was probably during the end one of the closing nights for sure. I think I just all of a sudden I just got a rush of emotion. It just happens to you. That's the thing. When you're doing theater and you're like out there performing, it's just so different when there's a whole crowd seeing you. You know what I mean? Like there's one thing to have rehearsals, and there's another thing to be actually doing what you've been doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool, especially since you guys are here now, like as actors. Because I remember when I was little, we would go to the Nutcracker, I think.
Oh, the Nutcracker, yeah.
And I would see like them like acting, and I just thought it was really cool that they're like at that time, like when I was little, I did not know if it was real life or not for some reason. I thought it was like the TV show or something like that. But it's so cool to see like that there's actors here right now.
And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
I kind of want to act now.
You should.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, like right now with the show, so what's the show that you're currently doing right now? Because I know you got out of rehearsals yesterday or something like that, right?
For the promo.
For the
video that
promo,
we
right?
did for this, yeah. So that, funny enough, so you and I did In the Heights at the Throckmorton in 2018. This is the first show that I'm doing back at the Throckmorton Theater.
Since 2018.
Since 2018 for In the Heights. So I'm playing Bernardo in a production of West Side Story. And it goes up March 10th through March 29th. So if you want to see me in action, we have a great cast. It's going to be amazing.
Say the date for that one more time.
It's March 10th through the 26th. And then so that's like, weekends. So we do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday and Saturdays are at 7 p.m. and then Sundays are at 2 p.m. at 142 Throckmorton Avenue in Mill Valley.
And you can get tickets in advance on the website.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Are tickets for sale now?
I believe so.
Oh,
I believe
right.
they are.
Yeah, so go to Throckmorton, just search up Throckmorton Theater, and you'll be able to find tickets there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also from my experience doing adult community theater, a group of my friends that I've made along the way we're working on this devised play. We're like taking a play and we're kind of like, making little modifications to it, and we're calling it Hush. And it's going up, I forget the name of the theater in San Francisco, but it goes up April 22nd. And it's this really cool, like, play. I'll just leave it at that. But.
Interesting. And before the show, I asked you about school. So,
Yes.
did you learn like skills of acting or production at school too?
I will say a lot of it actually started in my childhood. When I was a child, my parents enrolled me into this modeling agency, and that's kind of where the seed...
I forgot about that. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, so that's where the seed was planted in terms of me wanting to be able to like act and, play pretend. But once out of high school, it was just kind of working at theater companies that kind of got me that experience. And then I was going to College of Marin on the side, and I actually did do a College of Marin theater production during the pandemic. It wasn't on the stage. They like sent us film equipment, and I acted in front of a green screen, and they like recorded it. But yeah, a lot of it has just been going out into the field.
Oh, and was it like a specific major or just certain classes that you took?
Yeah, I think right now I'm a communications filmmaking major at College of Marin right now. But then I was just like, I'll take my general ed courses, and then, I'll do theater for one semester. Yeah.
And do you plan to do like a bachelor's with that or just for fun?
Yeah, absolutely. Like my thing right now is, so I'm actually working as a technical theater director at a private school in Mill Valley called Marin Horizon. So it's like everything, lights, sound, props, set making. So I'm not sure which like field or which like, focus in that stage production that I want to go into, but I definitely do want to pursue a higher education in that realm. And then hopefully I really do want to try out Broadway. I do.
Do it, man.
I wanna.
Nothing's stopping you.
I want to shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
Try and go to New York. See if I could work on Broadway.
Or get to what is it? That one university that's super popular, NYU, right?
NYU. There's a handful of amazing, great schools in New York that have ties to Broadway.
Oh, really?
Like pipelines that'll just take you to the production.
What does Broadway do?
Broadway.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Broadway is kind of it's a combination of musical theater shows and plays, which is just, stage productions without singing and dancing. But it is kind of like the American hub of the top of the pyramid in terms of theater in New York. And I think it's literally based off of Broadway Street. and there are all of these theaters. I think that's how it started off historically, but now there's, a bunch of theaters all across New York City.
And is
So
it,
it's like the top of the top.
and is it specifically in New York, or is there any other places?
Yeah, I would say like if you do want to find like the best theater work in America, it's definitely going to be in New York. England has an equivalent called the West End, and I believe it's located in London. But it's like kind of the same thing where like there's just like this one area in a big city where the best theater is put up.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, John. We're going to delve right into more of your personal life in the second half of the show. But before that, we're going to play a quick song by Ismael Lara called Pa Adelante, and we'll be right back.
This society try to crush my spirit, but my chicano so don't fall. I'm 100 with it. Mi gente dice al 100, puro pa' adelante, pa' atrás a más, que eso ocurre en vivo ya verás. Vamos, vamos, pa' adelante. Vamos, vamos, pa' adelante. Vamos, vamos, pa' adelante. Vamos, vamos, yeah. So who's the victor? You Roman silver, the 30 coins of Judas. I'm at that gold, abundance of wealth that we've never told. I'm the mind alliance, youngest defiance, storm of stars and all the science. Duality of the serpent, don't misinterpret. I'm fine wisdom, age in the temple of the serpent. I'm the flaminess of chorus poems, wisdom that hits the soul. Nobility, we slip forth these hard to fight every day. We born to blue victory, not to fade decay. I'm put for chop princess, anything on her horse, ready for war. We don't die, we regenerate. Victory, our fate. On a cool breeze, I move with ease. My intellect stays strapped. I embrace my heritage. The brown, white, and the black. I got my mind on my studies, and my studies on my mind. Ready to hit back with facts. Blackjack. So what's the meaning? Historical victory from the beginning.
All right, and welcome back. That was Pa Adelante by Ismael Lara. And speaking of Ismael Lara, we are having an open mic event here at the Multicultural Center of Marin on February 24th. So it's Friday, February 24th, from 6 to 8 p.m. Ismael Lara will be there along with David, who was on our show a couple weeks ago. And it's an open mic event that's open to all ages. There's going to be slam poetry, acting. There's going to be musical performances. So if you're interested in any of that, get into contact with us on our social medias, and we'll make sure to put you on a list. Or if not, if you just want to drop in and do something, go for it, because we'll be open. And again, that event is the Friday, February 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. And there will be free pizza. So how can you say no to some free pizza?
Is Ismael singing?
Ismael might perform. He might perform, but he'll be there. He'll be there. So that's really exciting. I also wanted to mention that the Canal Community Resilience, also known as CCRC, this is a community group that meets at 5:30 on the third Wednesday of every month to discuss issues that residents face with a focus on environmental justice, climate change, and other challenges that come with that. The meetings have explored issues such as water quality, sea level rise, waste management, access to community resources, etc. So very community-centric meetings. And if you're someone who wants to build advocacy skills and give a voice to those who may otherwise not have it, then come and join the CCRC meetings. You can get into contact with Marco at mberger@multiculturalmarin.org, or you can text or call him at 415-960-5538. Again, that's 415-960-5538. I also want to mention that Listos, California is the state of California's emergency preparedness campaign. You can find 5 easy steps to prepare for any natural disaster at their website. Text Listos CA to 72345. That's Listos CA 72345 to receive tips in English or Spanish on how to prepare for natural disasters. Here in Marin County, we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of flooding. You guys know how that flooding was at the beginning of the month. So yeah, it's always good to be prepared for that, or for any earthquakes, because California is just earthquake land. So yeah.
No, thank you for this PSA. I think it's very informative. Although it may sound long, the PSA, but these are important notes that we should let our community know. And then we can move on to more of John. John's personal life. And when you were describing about your favorite moment with Javier, you were saying some Spanish words. So I was wondering, are you Hispanic?
Yeah, and yeah, so fun fact, a little bit my background. So my dad immigrated to San Francisco from Chile. And my mom immigrated from the Philippines. So I'm Chile-Pino.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yes.
So he's half Filipino, half Chilean.
is Filipino Asian or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pacific. It's a Pacific island.
Wow, so you're like Hispasian.
Yeah.
Hispasian. There we go.
Hispasian.
Yeah, hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I will say too, so in terms of the Spanish as well. So I lost my father at a really young age. I was in like the 3rd grade. I was like 8 or 7. And growing up, my parents actually raised my older sister and I to try and be trilingual, where like they would both teach us, you know, their own languages.
Right.
And then at school we would learn English. But then when he passed away, that kind of, you know, fell apart. But then obviously like growing up, especially in high school, I tried to make it an effort to learn Spanish and take Spanish at school so that I could get in touch with family members on my dad's side. And luckily, before the pandemic, I've been able to do that. And I actually,
Oh, that's awesome.
I met my dad's sister, aka my tia. Yeah,
That's really great. Well, you know, thank you for sharing that. I know that's very personal and very deep. You know,
no problem
but
for me.
we appreciate that, John. I also wanted to ask, like, you like so for those who might like me and John, we knew each other through video games, through middle school, and then we really started to get to know each other through high school. How so you've been in Marin County for how many years? Because originally you're from Vallejo, right?
I think yes, correct. I think I moved here. I was in 7th grade. I think
When
that
you
was
were-
like 2012.
Moved to our middle school, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I've been living in Marin now for about like 10 or 11 years.
And what's the differences that you've seen, you know, growing up in Vallejo? How was it growing up in Vallejo, and then comparing that to how you grew up here in Marin?
Yeah, and I will say it's definitely hard to tell because, you know, there's like the like toddler elementary school kind of because I finished 6th grade in Vallejo and then I moved here. So then it's like kind of having those early stages versus adolescence is very different. And I mean, I did keep in touch with a lot of my friends back in Vallejo as I was growing up here in Marin. But I will say, there definitely are, like, I mean, when you just pit, like, you know, the two cities, or you just compare the two cities, like, you know, and the socioeconomic differences that both of those cities have.
Yeah.
It's kind of like once you have that, you can kind of figure out, like, you know, the differences. There's definitely a, like, around the food that would be on the table, like, huge difference. The cultural difference as well, because Vallejo, like, growing up, I had a huge Filipino and Black, like, community around me when I was growing up. And then here, I live in downtown San Rafael. So obviously, like, you know, I don't...
Very different communities.
Very,
Yeah.
very different.
That's interesting because for me, I also moved to Vallejo when I was at the end of 5th grade. So I had literally my 6th grade year in Vallejo. But the thing is that I was homeschooled because my parents were worried about, like, how dangerous it was over there for some reason. So we were homeschooled, and it was very, like, different vibes, I would say, from Vallejo to Marin.
Yes.
And I would say we would rent a house there because it was cheaper in Vallejo. So we did that. And I remember, like, at night, I would hear helicopters, ambulances. We even heard shots. And I was, like, in 6th grade. I was like, what is going on? And it was during the time where, like, we were supposed to sleep. So it was just... And I would hear rumors, like, that 2 blocks down of the house that I used to live, like someone got shot and got killed. And then I was like, just like, I don't know, like it was just, I just heard so much rumors about Vallejo like being so dangerous, but I still consider it like a really nice place. And what's it called? Like I remember like I was like so happy that I was like close to Six Flags, because that was like the
Oh, that's the big thing, huh?
I had a friend who lived in the neighborhood right next to Six Flags.
Yeah.
Oh,
As it was like the first 2 summers that I moved away, literally I would just stay at his house, and he would have, it wouldn't be a rumor, it would be a confirmation. There was like someone in that neighborhood who like, you know, there was some crime scene that happened in that neighborhood. But like it would literally, like as a kid, my mom would drop me off in Vallejo, and then we would just walk to Six Flags like every day of the summer. Like, yeah.
And I remember like going to the shopping malls and just getting boba. Like it was just a different vibe from here in Marin.
lots of good Asian food over there.
Oh yeah.
Lots of good. And I still got to go
Seafood
try
City.
Jollibee.
I know we have to go. I've been telling Javier, like, I need to take him to Island Pacific.
Yeah,
I
you
need
got to take me
him
to all the good Filipino
bakeries.
spots. Yeah.
What is that, like Filipino food?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So Jollibee is like a like fried chicken, like fast food, or yeah, it's a fast
Kind of like a
food
KFC, but for Filipinos,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Filipino food, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest, one of the other menus on their dish that I keep telling Javier as well, they sell this spaghetti, but it isn't like red sauce. They put this sauce in it called banana ketchup.
Yeah, so I'm like, whoa, what is banana ketchup?
And it doesn't have bananas?
I'm actually not sure how the condiment is made, but like it does taste like bananas and it does taste like ketchup.
Yeah. Oh, and I was gonna ask you, so do you know like the language of Filipino?
Tagalog. My mom, so short answer is no, but when because my mom, you know, she speaks it fluently. So Tagalog is the national language of the Philippines, but then also before the colonialization of the Philippines, there are also like native languages dependent
Yeah.
on the region that
Like
you're from.
dialects, yeah.
Yeah, dialects. So my mom, she also speaks Bicolano. So when she
Oh,
speaks,
interesting.
yeah, and then because one of the regions is called Bicol, so the language is called Bicolano.
Okay.
When she speaks Bicolano, I'm like, but then like when she speaks like Tagalog, because there are so many similarities from the Spanish that I learned in high school, there are like some things that I can pick up where it's like the days of the week are the same, some nouns are the same, some verbs are the same. So sometimes I can pick up context clues whenever she's speaking.
So do you understand, like, if someone were to talk to you in Tagalog, what you know what they're saying, or very?
No.
No?
Because if someone is speaking at me and they're speaking to me very fast, then I'm
You're like, but you know how to distinguish Tagalog and Picolino?
Bicolano.
Bicolano, yeah. You know how to distinguish those two, though.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting how that works, and it's very similar to both. You know, to our cultures, because Annalie went to Guatemala, and you went to a part where they speak a dialect over there, right?
Only Quiche.
Quiche, right?
So that's a dialogue. But yeah, it's pretty cool because I remember there was like this Filipino guy from my Spanish class, and he was so good in Spanish because he knew some of the words already from Filipino like language. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And I feel like it's pretty like good to know like the difference between languages, and it's cool to like have that skill, because for me, like I've been like watching like K-dramas or Chinese dramas, and I can like pick up like which language it is just like by hearing someone. So like I think it's really cool to just acknowledge like different languages. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my supervisors, he's Filipino, and you know, he's told me like there's also dialects in the Philippines where they use some Spanish words in it because you know, people that colonized it were Spanish colonizers, no, in the Philippines. Yeah, so that's why also a lot of Filipinos look Hispanic or something, right? Because you're like, oh, that they think they're Hispanic, but no, they're Filipino, right? So it's just interesting to see the history there and how, you know, both Latin America and the Philippines are both, you know, had Spanish colonizers, and just to see how they kind of, some of the things and the cultures kind of merge, and sometimes they're just different. So I don't know, it's just always cool to me. And every Filipino person I've ever met have always been super duper chill. So
Yeah.
there's that too.
Yeah, and it's funny too because at the private school that I work at, the Spanish teacher immigrated here from Puerto Rico.
Oh,
And one of the things when I told him that I was Filipino, he told me, he was like, like he has a master's degree, and he said for his thesis, his whole entire thing was talking about how the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Cuba have a lot more in common than people think. Like, it's like, yeah.
I think the U.S. wanted to get the land from those.
Yeah, and then also I think just like he was telling me like he can tell you better than me. But he was saying like also just like historically how the people have just been going about, their history. There's just like a lot of similarities where like it was really fascinating, but he's the expert on that.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, so you were talking about food, and kind of like stuck in my mind right now. So do you have any favorite food that's vegetarian, so I can try it out later, like Filipino food?
Ooh, that's vegetarian. Yeah. So there's this noodle dish called palabok.
Blabba?
Yeah, palabok. Palabok,
okay.
if I remember.
Palabok.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Palabok.
Yes. And then there's also a it's kind of like an egg roll, but like done differently, but you can get it like vegetarian. It's called lumpia. That's
Lumpia.
Lumpia.
Lumpia. Interesting.
Wait, and pavlok, what is it?
Palabok. It's like a noodle dish, and then yeah, I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it at a noodle
Do
dish.
you really know the dish?
Yes, I do. I'm like hesitant just because like full disclosure, I do not know how it's cooked.
Oh, okay.
But like, cause there's like certain ways that you can cook things.
But
Sorry. Oh, sorry. The one thing that I will put you on though are the Filipino desserts.
Halo.
Halo halo.
I still want to try that.
I personally don't like. They put beans in the halo because
okay.
it's like shaved ice and ice cream and like Jello and like coconut shavings.
Yeah.
And then they put like beans. I don't like the beans.
You don't like the beans.
Like the beans. There's this really good, it's almost like an egg roll, but it's for dessert. It's called turon. Turon. And I used to make it with my Lola, where it would be just like, like a wrap, but you would take a banana and you would take a jackfruit. You put them side by side and you'd wrap it in a certain way. You deep fry it. And then you either like after it's deep fried, you either coat it with cane or brown sugar. Ooh. And it's so good.
It looks good. I'm like hungry now.
Yeah. But moving on, I wanted to ask you, John, what are your kind of goals for this year? I know you've been doing a lot already in January, but do you have like any set goals for yourself that you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hush, the show that I'm working on. So that technically is going to be my first play, not like, because there's musicals where you sing and dance, and then there's plays where it's just a straight show. Hush is going to be the first show in a really long time, first play in a really long time that I've done. So like definitely like getting that up, trying to do more like plays. So that'll be one of my goal. Getting that film work up this year, that's definitely another goal that I've had in terms of, of my career. And then I would say another, I know you asked for one. I'm giving you.
No, that's it. Go on. I know.
And I know I've told you so much about this, of the idea of my own content creation.
Right.
Just like for me, myself, just as an artist, not just in theater, but like, cause we play video games a lot.
And we have a lot of friends actually that from our kind of, not our class. Yeah. Some from our class. Well, we know one friend in particular who got super big on like TikTok and on Instagram. Has like 100,000 followers or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's just like we have like and there's like other people that we know that are pushing content out there, and it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see like how creative our class kind of was. I mean, I just gotta keep shouting out our class of 2017,
Yes.
man. But I'm just saying, like,
I miss them.
We got to shout out 2022, 2021. What was Santi's 2020, I think.
or probably 2019. I don't know, but yeah. And I mean, speaking of our class, did you enjoy your time at SR? Like looking back, did you?
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, especially for high schoolers coming out of the pandemic, I can't even imagine
how that
the
was,
like
yeah.
the mental well-being that they're going through. Because I will say, to answer your question, I loved my time at SR. Though I will say, if I could go back, I wish that I could change my mentality from my day-to-day life. I feel like I would have had way more fun if I would have been, a little bit more laid back.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I think that when you're in high school, you feel like way more like, oh, it's the end of the world if you don't
There's so much
transfer to
pressure.
college. Or there's a lot of pressure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, I would say like for me, like freshman year, I was already thinking about like college, and everyone was talking about APs.
Oh man.
And I didn't take an AP in freshman year, and I felt like I was already behind. And then sophomore year came, and I was like building up my APs, and everyone was like doing APs on top of a sport, and then on top of that working. So like I had to like up my game, and then I had to like so yeah, I was like very busy in high school, and I would say like the only year that I was like partly chill was freshman year, but after that it was just
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was rough.
Yeah, I feel like throughout the years you like grow a lot in just 1 year of high school. Like a lot.
100%.
And you kind of realize like also like your real friends over time as well.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
other thing, is that in high school you're kind of confused about like your friend groups, or you get with some friends but then something happens, you're not with that friend anymore.
Yeah.
And you start realizing that like when you leave high school, people just disappear, bro. People just go, oh, you see some people every now and then, but you don't. The only people that stick with you really are like the true friends, like the ones that actually want to like catch up with you or stay in the area. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
On that front, the way that I've always looked at it is like, when you chop down a really old tree and there's a bunch of rings.
oh yeah,
I like to think about it where like you figure out what that like first ring is. And like, there's probably only like 2 or 3 people in that ring. And then like you just keep branching out. Cause it's like some people you have a falling out with, some people like you just kind of like fall out of contact. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like you still see them and you're like, oh my God, how have you been?
Yeah.
Like, all of those things. But then it's just like just how things are. And it's like, it's not a bad thing, but sometimes people move closer in the ring. Some people move out. And that's just how life is.
yeah.
It's such a good comparison. I didn't think of that, but that's really good. I would say the same thing. Like for me, I think I just have to prioritize like who I can hang out with. And then just like some friends that just go well with my time, because like there's some friends that I know they would not want to go to the library and study and do homework together. And so those like I have to do separate time. Like I have to make sure like I do my homework before like I hang out with them. And there's like friends who like love going to the library and doing homework. So it's like more easy to hang out with them. But like yeah, it's like you have to prioritize like just like basically on what like you want to pursue in your career and how that molds into your relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, John. I also just wanted to ask, since we're kind of running towards the end of the show here, what advice do you have for people who want to get into acting or want to get into directing or any of these performing arts?
Yeah, so I would say definitely, and I feel like because especially a lot of the people who are probably listening to me are going to be, people who are around in the community. I would say, especially if you're like, oh, theater's not my thing, I want to go into like film acting. 100% walk into your drama program, like at your school. And if not, look up other community theaters like around your area. Because I will say there definitely is, while both are great options, when I was in high school, it was like, I started off at San Rafael High's drama program.
Right.
And like, obviously I went there all 4 years, but I would also supplement that with going to the Throckmorton Theater, because that's just the only theater that I was aware of. As I got out of high school, I figured out that there were these other production companies like Stapleton, Katia and Company, Rhythms, North Bay Theatrics, Backyard Kids Theater Company. Like, just off of the top of my head, there are 5 different theater companies that are going to be putting up a different show at the same time. So then it's like, it's definitely just being able to just go out there and do it. And I know it's easier said than done if you're like feeling like worried, but if really trying out acting and performing, you definitely have to you kind of have to be a go-getter to be able to be there, practice, work on your craft. And especially I started off with a basketball background. Like in Vallejo.
I remember John used to have like an afro in middle school. You had they had like the big old afro, and you always wore all the Golden State Warriors jerseys. Mm-hmm. Dang, dude, that's classic John right there.
Yeah, and like I used to get buzz cuts, but like
that's right.
Like, but my story in high school is your classic Troy Bolton story. I started off as a basketball jock, and then I found my way into the drama program. But then even knowing that I have those two, practices under my belt, they're very much the same. Because especially for sports, you show up, you're like, oh, I have to eat right. I have to warm up properly. I have to memorize the playbook. It's like performing
absolutely,
is there's so many constants.
And it's very similar mindsets as well, because you're example, like you were saying, like basketball, you're performing, you're playing in front of an audience. Same thing for theater. You're acting in front of an audience, right? And it's just about your performance. Like performance is key to both of these arts, right? Both of these activities. And no, you're completely right. I haven't really thought of that connection before. That totally makes sense. Yeah, like like anyone can literally act if they wanted to, right?
Mm-hmm. Like me.
Yes, exactly.
Like Anna Lee,
yeah,
exactly.
So if you ever want to get into acting, just let me know.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering, would you ever consider acting in a platform like Netflix?
Oh, absolutely. When 13 Reasons Why was around, they actually I forgot how I figured out that they were doing an extra casting call, but I showed up to a hotel, I was in their system, and then they showed me this website called My Casting File. And then it's you just put up your own, you put your headshot and all of those things. And then if there's a job available where they want you, you just go out and do it. And actually, speaking of that, from that one day, I never ended up finding a time in my schedule to be booked as an extra. My friend that went with me, though, made a file, didn't do 13 Reasons Why. His contact information was still there, but when Oppenheimer came into town, Christopher Nolan's film, they were looking for extras, and they contacted my friend because he just had that file there. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So what's that website called again? My Casting File?
My Casting File.
All right, so go on My Casting File if you potentially want to be an extra in a film. That's pretty sick.
Yes.
But yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to end things off with just some of the really quickly, what are some of the community, local theaters here that people can go to? So there's 23 Elephants.
Yeah, so 23 Elephants.
In San Anselmo.
Or actually, I will say 23 Elephants, now they operate more out of San Anselmo Rec Center. So if you have a little one who's in middle school, probably the oldest that they would teach now are middle school. For high schoolers, I would highly recommend Throckmorton Theater, where I'm doing West Side Story right now. Katia and Company, Rhythms, that's up in Novato. And then there's Stapleton. Stapleton does all things dance. I think they do some singing. I know they're heavy on their jazz and ballet. Happy Feet Studios in Mill Valley as well. It's great dancing studio. Yeah, and North Bay Theatrics up in Sonoma and Backyard Kids. Yeah, perfect. A lot. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. Again, we're reaching the end of the show here. But yeah, any last words, Anna Lee?
No, just thank you for thank you for coming here on the show. I think it was really cool, like learning more about acting, and having you is like really funny and high spirit energy that I really liked. So
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for being here with us. We hope that you all enjoyed today's show. And we'll catch you all next week here on Friday at 4. So take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right, bye.